Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today we're joined by J Christensen, a principles-based financial planner, to talk about the financial side of practice ownership. Kyle shares foundational advice, tips for managing cash flow, and strategies for building long-term financial security. If you're ready to take control of your finances and set yourself up for success, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. This episode was brought to you by MyOrthoVA. Hey docs, is your team overwhelmed by endless admin tasks? Let MyOrthoVA throw you a lifeline. With expert HIPAA-trained virtual assistants specializing in orthodontics, MyOrthoVA helps streamline everything from billing and insurance to phone support and reporting. Right now, over 100 VAs are supporting 58 practices nationwide, cutting staffing costs by up to 60%. No onboarding fees, no long-term contracts. Just a simple, cost-effective way to transform your operations and focus on patient satisfaction. Brace for growth. Visit myorthova.com to interview your next best hire and align your practice for success. Hey docs, it's that time of year again. AAO 2025 is just around the corner and we can't wait to see you in Philadelphia. Jill Allen and Associates will be at booth number 2250, so be sure to stop by. Whether you're new and looking to connect, an industry partner, or a friendly face from the past, we'd love to catch up. And since this year's theme is the biggest party ever, we're kicking off things right with an exclusive happy hour sponsored by Provide, the leader in tech-enabled financial services for aspiring and established healthcare practice owners on April the 24th. Great people, great conversations, and the perfect way to start AAO in style. Spots are limited, so you must RSVP. Use the link in the show notes and be sure to mention Hey Docs to get your name on the list. But listen, guys, the fun doesn't stop there. Join us at our other co-hosted events, the Celebration Party on Friday and the Mary's List Party on Saturday. See you in Philly, and remember to come by and say hi at booth number 2250. I'm so excited to have you on Hey Docs. Thanks for being here today.
I'm grateful to be invited. Thank you.
One of the ways I like to start off Hey Docs is to have my guests tell a little bit about themselves and their company. So if you wouldn't mind, talk to us a little bit about Unique Advantage and yourself.
Okay. So I always tell people that financial planning was my second choice of profession. I would rather be a fly fisherman or a fisherman, but for the most part, fishermen don't make good money. So I chose my second option, but I love what I do. I've been doing financial planning since 1999. I started my own company in 2004, Unique Advantage. Over time, I have developed and really clarified our own philosophy and our own planning approach, and we call it principles-based financial planning. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more of that as we go along, but yeah, it's a great journey. We have clients all over the country, lots of different professions and income levels, and I love it. I love helping people, and I think growing up, I noticed that most people were not very well off financially and were working for money and never really having money work for them. So I wanted to change that for myself, and I wanted to change that for the people I came in contact with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so much fun when you're able to take a vision like that and then turn it into a company of your own, and then be able to maybe apply those philosophies or whatnot on and principles on with your clients. So I think that's awesome that you were able to do that.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's really cool seeing the change in people's lives.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that approach. You said it's a unique approach, again, hence the name. But let's talk a little bit about that and what does that mean. And I think before I even have you do that, I might have you back up just a little bit, because I have a lot of doctors that listen that are newer to the industry or new to owning a business or whatnot. And so I think sometimes when you hear the word
financial planner, you think, I have to have a certain amount of money, or I have to be at a certain level, or I have to be this, that, or the other in order to even think about that. So I'm wondering first if you could just unpack what financial planner means, or at least means to you and your business. And then does this apply to everybody? And then let's jump into that, that unique approach you take.
Okay. Yeah. I think that kind of hesitancy that maybe a lot of new doctors have is probably warranted for the most part in the financial industry. And this is where we start to see the differentiation between what we do, how we think, and what most of the industry thinks. Most of the industry only wants to work with people who already have a lot of money or already make a lot of money. And the reason is because the financial institutions that pay them tell them to basically get assets under management. Okay. So that's their goal. I'll give you just a quick story related to that. So I have a client here in Texas that was a part owner of an oil and gas company. And they recently, about 2 years ago, sold their oil and gas company. And as a result, he ended up getting about 21 million in the sale. And he was a small shareholder in the company. There were shareholders that got over 200 million in the sale. And so here comes Goldman Sachs, right? Goldman Sachs is a major brokerage firm and they want to help out, right? They're trying to help. I'm going to put that in quotes, to help. So they show up after the wealth is created, right? And it was created in the oil and gas business, but then they're there to help negotiate the deal and make it go through. And then guess what? They want to be the ones that manage the money that comes from it. And so now they're like vultures on this deal and waiting. And as soon as the deal goes through, they've wined and dined all of the partners and everybody's going to put their proceeds with Goldman Sachs. And now it looks like from the outside, it looks like Goldman Sachs created hundreds of millions of dollars for these people. But the reality is they didn't. They came in after the wealth was created, and now they're going to get paid an annual fee for as long as those assets stay with the company. So that's the dirty secret of the industry. They don't want to work with people who don't already have assets. They want to go in because their philosophy isn't designed to create the assets in the first place, right? They're not going to show a doctor how to be successful in their business. They're going to come in after the doctor already is successful and already maybe is selling their practice at that point. That's how the financial industry works. Yeah. And it's a sad situation, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's tough. And again, it's hard to know as new business owners when you're talking about that and you're saying, well, why would I even need to plan for anything? I don't have anything yet. I don't even know what I need to be thinking about. So I love it that it sounds like your approach is we're going to help you on that front end to build and to plan for that wealth. And then it becomes wealth management once you have built that up.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. We like to be the ones in fact, right after this interview, I'm going to have a review with a client that I've worked with. He's a dentist and I've been working with him since he bought into his very first practice. And he was making in his first year about $250,000 per year. Right now, he is making well over 2.5 million per year. And he owns 5 different locations and he has quite a few doctors working for him. So that's an example of us, him implementing the principles that we've taught him this whole time.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about those principles and, just what is the foundation that, maybe newer doctors or somebody who's new to this concept should be thinking about as they are looking at financial planning?
I think doctors and probably almost everyone who goes into a profession, they've gotten a lot of training and education related to their profession, related to their skill, whatever they're going to be practicing. But what they didn't get was a lot of education related to money. They didn't get a lot of education related to insurances or taxes or saving and investing, especially outside of their business. And that's what Robert Kiyosaki, who's one of the people that I think I look up to, he helped me, or reading his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, came out in 1998 and I started in 1999. So that book really had a major influence on my view of the world financially. But he talks about everybody should have 2 businesses. The business that they're in, their practice, if they're an orthodontist or dentist or whatever, right? It's their practice. And then the second business should be their money. And they should treat it just like that, right?
Yes.
They should take it as seriously as they do their other business. But usually that doesn't happen. And I think a lot of the reason for that is just there is a general lack of education. So if a person like that met with me, we take them through this very educational process that covers A to Z. It's everything that they're doing. And we're hoping to help them avoid I'm going to learn everything on my own and through my own mistakes, which you'll learn, but that's an expensive way to learn.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what do you think for somebody who's getting into this, those fundamentals need to be like? What are the things they need to be thinking about for building that stronger financial future?
I think one of the first things that comes to mind is something called Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law kind of points to a natural tendency that we have. The natural tendency is that the more money we make, what usually happens to expenses? Our expenses go up, lifestyle increases, right? And if you're in the medical world, right, or you're a dentist or orthodontist or oral surgeon, right? Typically, you can look around you and other orthodontists and where do they live and what kind of car do they drive and where do they send their kids to school, right? And so there is a tendency to, as soon as life changes financially, right, you start making more money per month than you were making per year the year before, right? And suddenly everything that you had to say no to before, you can say yes to now. And all of a sudden lifestyle can kind of take a huge bite out of that gain that you thought you might have, the advantage that you thought you might have. So I think that the first principle that we teach, the first fundamental principle that we teach is to really pay yourself first. And there's actually a great book by Mike Michalowicz called Profit First that I'd recommend for anybody who's listening to this podcast that is a business owner. The formula for profit that's generally accepted accounting principle is gross revenue minus expenses equals profit. The problem with that is that profit's an afterthought. You pay yourself last in that formula. And he says that's why most business owners actually struggle or even fail, is because they're the last to eat. And so he says the formula is wrong. The formula should be gross revenue minus your profit. So you choose how much you're going to keep out of the revenue from the business, and then equals expenses, right? Expenses will eat up everything that's left. But if we leave profit for last, think of that in our own personal lives. If we get income and then we pay for everything that we want or need, what's left? What's the profit? There's zero, right?
Yeah.
It'll just disappear. And it doesn't really matter how much you make. That's what I've learned in over 25 years of doing financial planning. It doesn't matter how much you make. That tendency occurs for everybody. And in fact, it's just bigger things that you can pay for. When you make more money, now instead of renting a boat, you're buying a boat. Instead of vacationing at Disneyland once a year, you're going to Malaysia or something that just gets bigger.
Yeah. And I think it's a great concept to think about, and it totally makes sense. I can think of myself 10 years into my business and what I was doing 18 years ago as a new business owner and how my lifestyle is now 18 years later, or when I was first starting off in my life, just doing life, and where I'm at now significantly later, totally different.
Yes.
And I think what is difficult that probably a few of my doctors are hearing is it's hard. That's a hard principle, especially when you're a start business owner. Because I can remember, I'm sure you can remember too, it's hard to be like, I've got everything is going out. It's taking all that I've got to get this business going. How can I possibly think about paying myself? And I'm sure there's some very unique strategies in that. And the paying yourself doesn't necessarily mean, oh yeah, I want $100,000 or I want $200,000 a year. And so of course I'm just going to pay myself that you maybe there's a lot of thought and strategy, I'm sure, that go into how does that get set up. But I do think, and I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit to those business owners that may be listening and just trying to wrap their head around that concept in correlation to how do I make that work? It's almost if you're religious, how do I find that 10% to tithe off at the top when I can barely buy my groceries?
point. I think we have to be realistic, right? Obviously, if we're just starting out in a business, we can't say, I'm going to pay myself $1 million per year.
Right.
It is gross revenue first, right? In that
Mhm.
formula. So gross revenue, what is the gross revenue? If we leave it unchecked, the whole point, I think, of what we're talking about here, paying yourself first, is that if we leave expenses unchecked, then there won't be profit. And most
Right.
people think that the more money I make, the more profit I'm going to have. And usually that's not the case as a percentage. You might make more dollars, but now you're like, I work 80 hours a week.
There's always a give.
You
There's
can make
always a
more
give.
money,
Yeah.
but percentage wise, it might not be profitable or more profitable by just because you're making more money. Does that make sense? So I think that the empowering part, as I work with business owners, is what you save is a choice. Okay. The amount of your income that you're going to save, the amount of income that you're going to pay yourself is a choice. And we just have to agree with and understand that there's a natural tendency, not just personally, not just as a human being, but in our business, there's a natural tendency for expenses to just rise. And those expenses can and will eat up all profit. They can and will eat up all revenue. You can make millions of dollars per year and still lose money. So how do we change that? So that's there. We do teach our clients the nuts and bolts of how do we make it systematic? How do we make it automatic? And maybe when you're very first starting with your business and you really have no idea what the revenue is going to be, right? You just took on $1 million loan for an office or equipment or whatever, and you're just like, this is overwhelming. Yes, maybe we try and do our best estimate of how much we should save from the business, how much we should pay ourselves, but we also want to make it accessible. So let's say we overestimate on how much we think we can pay ourselves or save. Can an owner put capital back in the business? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. If we're saving that money, and I'm going to put that in quotes too, if we're, quote, saving the money in investments that we can't touch, like a pension or 401k or a simple IRA or a SEP IRA, that could become problematic because then if we overestimate on how much we're paying ourselves and we end up really needing that money, you can't touch that money without being penalized. There's a lot of restrictions. So we really define what savings means and how it's different than investing. Those two aren't the same thing.
And now, a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Hey docs, if you want to have a great business, the right practice management software is essential. But some can be slow, outdated, and lacking good support. That's why I recommend Greyfinch to all orthodontists. It's the fastest, most reliable, and most secure platform to grow your business and improve your efficiency. It's completely web-based, so you can run your entire practice anywhere and from any device with no servers, no downloads, or hidden fees. They even have the most helpful and responsive support team around. Right now, Greyfinch is giving a $500 discount to our listeners. Visit greyfinch.com/Jill Allen to learn more and see why it's one of the fastest growing providers in America. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite because every smile deserves a suite of excellence.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think that's such a key and basic point that we really do have to understand. And I know when I'm working with startups and anybody who's listening that has worked with me, you've heard me say this over and over, but most of the time when we are starting off, my docs are holding a secondary position while they're growing their business. We are planning to have a certain amount of money in working capital. And by the end of working at that first year, the goal is we may have drawn down on that working capital, but we have that nest egg built back up again. And now that turns into our business savings account. And then we're working towards moving away from our associateship jobs and starting to take money out of the business to actually start paying for you. I think that the take home message is there is always a system and a plan, or you hope to have a system and a plan in place, but we aren't just going rogue here with anything that you're talking about or I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. And I think one of the other big stressors, and I am probably gearing this a little bit more towards our younger doctors, our newer business owners, is planning for the unexpected. And I feel like so many times I sit down with my clients and we really plan out year 1, year 2, year 3. What is happening? What should we be expecting to pay for? But inevitably, I'm going to have a doctor within a year where we got a random thing that happens. We got a hurricane that comes in and wipes out your practice, or we've got fires that come in and shut you down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. There's just those random things. Your health, you don't expect a health scare and something comes up. So I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit about that and maybe how doctors can plan for the unexpected or those risks, and maybe some strategies that would be easy to just implement it so that they're ready in the event that something like that were to happen.
Yeah, the reality is 100% of us will experience unexpected life events. That's just going to happen. Everybody who listens to this call, I guarantee you, has had something unexpected happen in their life. Where they're currently at right now and their entire circumstance, I'm sure they couldn't have predicted exactly. I know no financial plan that exists that had a pandemic starting in 2020 that was a part of that. That's going to happen. There are a lot of risks we face, right? Financially, there's a lot of risks. We can have property damage. We could have theft. We could have a lawsuit. We could become sick or injured. We could die. We could have major medical issues. There's all kinds of things that can and do happen. I think all of us know somebody that those things have happened to. I think a lot of times, especially the danger for a young person that I see often in financial planning, is that they think maybe they're not vulnerable.
That's so true. It's not going to happen to me, but not me.
Other people, or it happens later. Just here to tell you that's not always later, and it can happen to you. My very first client to pass away was a 32-year-old mom living in Wyoming. And crazy, unexpected. She had no health issues prior to this. It was just really crazy. And she left behind 2 little kids under 5 years old, and a husband. Wow. And but because we had done the planning right and we weren't trying to predict what was going to happen, we just had the principle of maximum protection across the board. That's protection. Here's one thing that I think will help all of your listeners make better decisions. Protection has nothing to do with needs, and you cannot predict what's going to happen or what the amount of damage will be. Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to insurance, for example, there's actually limits on how much insurance we can get. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the reason that exists is, let's say, Jill, that you have a $500,000 house, which sounds like an average price today. It could be low. Exactly. Depending on where you live, exactly. But let's say you had a $500,000 house and you wanted to get $1 million coverage for that house. Will the insurance company issue $1 million coverage for that house? The answer is no, they won't. They never incentivize a loss. They never will make you better off if the loss occurs. And so we can have that in mind as we're going about making choices on all of our insurance decisions.
Sure.
We can know that there is a maximum. And the sad truth is the insurance industry doesn't readily tell you what that maximum is. So you have to be working with somebody like me, or I just don't know a lot of others actually that teach this way, that is going to tell you what your maximum is that you could have. And so I think that's your right. You have the right to know what it is, whether you're going to actually buy that or whether or not you could pay the premium. That's up to you. That shouldn't be your advisor's decision.
Yeah, that's really good advice and something good to think about. And that is not something we talk a lot about. A lot of times, like you said in the very beginning, we're talking about where are the investments for the wealth, but not necessarily what are you doing to protect yourself in the event that those unexpected things, whether it's death, whether it's whatever it is, are coming into play. And just even thinking about that one analogy that you just used, that can really make such a difference.
Yeah, I think that it's insurance. If you looked up the definition of the word necessary evil, I think in most people's minds, they would have a picture of an insurance company, or that would be part of the definition. So I think there's a reason for that. I think part of the reason is because most people don't have maximum protection. They don't have the best protection they could have. So when the event occurs, they're disappointed in how it all works out. Like, for example, disability insurance is a really good area we can see this a lot. People, I think in their minds, check the box and say, oh yeah, I have disability insurance. Oftentimes they have it through their work. So I've got it, check the box. But they don't realize that the devil's in the details with disability insurance. And if it's super cheap disability insurance in that arena, you really do get what you pay for. So if you're paying hardly anything, you're probably not going to have good coverage in that policy. It's probably not an own occupation definition, or it's not an own occupation for the entire benefit period. It's probably got a cap on the maximum monthly benefit that's going to be paid out. It might be a short period that you're getting paid, or it doesn't have residual benefit or catastrophic rider or COLA, cost of living increase to the benefit. There's all kinds of details. We want to know what those details are, and we want to make sure that we're protecting the best we can. Because if I were to ask anybody listening to this call, if you were to die or become disabled, what percentage of your income would you want replaced? I think all of them would say all of it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would say, yeah, 1,000's fine, or 2,000 or whatever. They're going to say as much as I could get. What is that? That's what we're talking about. That's what the principle of maximum protection is. What is the best you could have? And if you don't know the answer to that, then you should probably find out.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, again, really great advice. And I would even add to that, and maybe you would echo this. I think too, sometimes we pick things and stick it and never go back and look at it. And to your point of, you may have a policy in place, but it may be from when you were in school, or it may be from when you were in a totally different place, even 3 years ago, 4 years ago in life. And you look at where you're at now, maybe working as an associate, starting your business, and those needs are so totally different. And I think because so many times these policies, like you said, I love the idea of like, check a box. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Okay, move on. And we don't really go back and look at that. And does it still apply? Does it still make sense? I can tell you, again, using myself as an example, when I was first getting started and I was a novice at understanding life insurance policies and all of that. And what I needed to what I thought when I was younger, once as business went along, as all the things in life, if I were to still have that policy in place, I'd be like, I wouldn't. That's like nothing for what I actually need and needed. But I think it's so easy to lose sight of that. And I say this a lot on my podcast, but I always say this is the unsexy side of business. Nobody really wants to spend a whole lot of time thinking about the financial planning and the policies. And I don't want to talk about all these different things. Number one, it's depressing. Number two, who understands it? Number three, there's so many other things I could be talking about and diving in. But it's, in my opinion, so imperative to the foundation of where you're going and setting yourself up for success as a whole in business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of the value that I provide to people is helping them with that unsexy part of the financial world. It's great. The sexy part is income, right?
Yeah,
Getting income or investment, all of that, right? Growing your business. That's all awesome. But if you don't do the foundation, you could just be growing that to lose it. Right. You could just be growing it to just be crumbling. So I would encourage everybody to visualize their business, their financial world, and they're building it on top of a foundation. And what kind of foundation do they really want? Do they want one that's really solid that they could build a skyscraper on? Or do they want one that they're haphazardly doing the foundation and then they're trying to build a skyscraper on it? It's predictable what's going to happen to that.
Yeah, for sure. As we're starting to wrap up here, I'd love it. You've been dropping little pearls this whole way through, but I'm wondering if you have any final points or advice that you would want to share with younger doctors or younger business owners, maybe just in how they can set themselves up for long-term success, maybe what they should be looking at if they are evaluating financial planners. I know, again, you started with that, but any just things that you're like, Jill, I really want to make sure the audience hears this.
Yeah, I had thought about this actually yesterday. I was thinking about the interview and I was like, this is probably going to be a question. I would just say that you're in a battle, okay? You're in a battle for control and use of your money. And I don't think we realize sometimes that we're in that battle. If we look around and we see all the financial institutions that exist and the army of financial advisors and planners that exist, there's millions of financial planners and advisors in the country. And I think we have to realize that there's an agenda that financial institutions have. And the agenda that they have is to separate you from the control and use of your money. And they want to do that for a long period of time. I think people actually intuitively know that financial institutions aren't really looking out for their best interests. There's nobody saying, hey, no financial institution is meeting and saying, how can we make Jill financially free? What they are doing is saying, how can we get more of Jill's money? Okay. And how can we hold on to it for longer? And so we just have to know that there's a different agenda. I'm not saying financial institutions are bad or we don't want to use them or they can't help us. But if we play the financial game the way they want us to play it, then we will lose. We will not become financially free because whoever has control and use of your money over your lifetime, that's who's going to become financially free. And so I teach people how to keep control and use of their money throughout their lifetime.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Good advice there. Kyle, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, if they want to learn more about Unique Advantage and just how maybe you are different and how you could help them, what's the best way that they can do that?
I always encourage people to read. And I've got a book that I wrote, Principles-Based Planning, and it's on Amazon. So it tells you the whole philosophy. You can read the book and it gives you a really good idea. It's not a very long book either. So it's maybe a few weeks of reading. And then you can go to our website, uniqueadvantage.biz, and that'll probably be in the show notes or something. But we're also on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok now and all over the place, which TikTok apparently might be banned soon.
We'll see what happens. Oh, that's great. I think this has been very informative. I love being able to bring guests on who can just shed light, especially because my audience is so focused on younger doctors. And I think anything that we can do, anything that I can do to help get good information out and into those doctors' hands or new business owners' hands, because it's a scary thing starting a business. It's a scary thing taking a chance on yourself. And anytime you get an opportunity to align yourself with somebody that is looking out for more than themselves, I think it's always a good thing. And Kyle, sounds like you've got some good things in place here to help docs along. So thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. You may not know this, but the way I like to finish up Hey Docs is I always love to do a speed round and ask a few questions before we end. So are you ready for the speed round challenge?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. What is one business trend you think more people should be paying attention to?
Especially in the dental world, I see a lot of DSOs taking over, and we're seeing less and less dentists and orthodontists and so on owning their own practice. I think that's an interesting trend that we're seeing. And I'm not sure if that's better or if that's worse. I guess time will tell. But that's an interesting trend I've been seeing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Anybody who's listening, I think you've heard my perspective. We're still going strong as solo practices. So you guys are going to do just fine. What is the most unexpected lesson that you've learned in your career?
Oh, good question. I think it's been unexpected or surprising to me at how few people in my industry are really teaching any principles at all. They're basically selling products and they're giving marketing points using verbiage that's just really marketing. And it's really surprising how that hasn't really helped anybody. It's not surprising that marketing things haven't really helped people, but the lack of principles. We're seeing a major increase in dependence on government programs, not an increase in independence, which kind of tells you something, even though we've got more people in the financial services industry than ever before.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. And then last one to finish us up. If you had unlimited resources, what's one big idea you'd bring to life?
It would be awesome to do financial planning and help people and not have to be concerned at all about money at all. Like I could just help people, which we do a lot of. It would be nice if that was completely not a factor.
Yeah.
And we're rapidly getting to that point. We don't have unlimited resources. We probably will never have unlimited resources, but I think you could help a lot of people if you had unlimited resources and not have to worry about the financial side of things.
Yep. For sure. For sure. That's great. Again, Kyle, thank you so much for being on the show today. And this was just great information. And I'm sure people will be reaching out. And I'm excited to get the book and read it myself. So thanks again. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.